Welcome back, casual gardeners. Today, I want to talk about something that's really cool, like literally cool, like cold stratification. It's so cool, it's cold. Okay. Imagine if you invested a bunch of energy to prepare your kids for success in the world, but the timing just wasn't right. Now, there are a lot of things that humans can do to make up for their poor timing or to, compensate and maybe give it another shot. Well, plants are not as mobile as we are. Wherever they sprout, that's where they're going to spend the rest of their lives. And whenever they begin to grow, that's just when they begin playing the lottery of their life. Timing isn't so important for tropical and semi-tropical plants because the seasonal variation in temperature isn't quite as extreme. We're ignoring places with dry seasons in the monsoons on purpose. Shut up. But plants in temperate zones, whenever they begin to grow, that's when the countdown to winter begins. So if, for instance, if you were a plant and you sprouted in August, well, in my neck of the woods, that would give you until the end of September, or just 2 months, to get everything ready for surviving the winter or producing seeds so that your seeds could overwinter and sprout again. It's not a lot of time. It's not optimal. And so a plant wants to give itself as much time before winter in a temperate area as it possibly can. And that is precisely why temperate plants and perennial plants will often require cold stratification to grow. But the reason I'm making this video right now is that this moment, this time here in January, may actually be a great time to begin stratifying some plants to grow in the spring. Now, cold stratification is exposure to a period of cold, usually damp cold, although you can dry stratify some seeds, but it's usually damp cold, for a period of at least 4 to 6 weeks. And the plants require this longer stratification time of 4 to 6 weeks at least. That helps to avoid, say you drop a seed in September. I'm making this up. So you drop your seed in September. A cold front comes down from Canada. Thanks, Canada. Wait, that's north. Thanks, Canada. And suddenly your seed thinks it's winter, but it's just September. If you don't have that requirement for a long stratification period, as soon as that cold front moves through and things warm up again for just a couple of weeks before the snow comes, well, that seed is going to sprout and then it's going to die. So a longer cold stratification period is really helpful from the plant perspective to make sure there are no false alarms so that we don't start growing until it's really, really time. So maybe you've heard of bulb forcing, winter sowing, and cold stratification, and you're like, well, what's the difference? Essentially, there is no difference. These are all cold stratification. They're just variations in technique. When you are winter sowing, you're cold stratifying. When you're forcing bulbs, you're cold stratifying. I used to struggle with cold stratification, and I was using the method of wrapping your seeds in damp paper towels and then putting them in a Ziploc bag and popping them in the refrigerator. Now I found that I have better luck I wring out my paper towels before I wrap the seeds in them, and I actually will put them in a little Tupperware in the fridge. And my hypothesis is that, well, they're going in a little bit drier but still damp, so they're less likely to rot. And then also I've enclosed some more air in there with them because the seeds are going through some of their life processes as they're cold stratifying. I think it might be a little bit better for them to have some air to breathe, like living things. But let me know in the comments if you actually have had more success in plastic bags. Maybe I was just doing something wrong. I'd love to find out because that would take up a lot less space. Most of the annual plants that we grow in our gardens don't really need cold stratification or will have a decent germination rate without it. Lettuce is a good example of a plant that does improve germination with cold stratification, but they already have such a good germination rate that it really doesn't matter. So You could theoretically get better germination from your lettuce if you cold stratified, but it's probably not worth your time. I don't feel like it's worth mine. Some of the common garden plants that you might consider cold stratifying are artichokes, cilantro, oregano, and garlic. If you're growing in USDA zone 8 or lower, you're already automatically cold stratifying your garlic when you plant it in the fall. So that's why we plant our garlic in the fall, so it can get those hours of cold stratification. But if you're growing in zones 9 or above and you're planting garlic, well, then you may actually need to do some cold stratification of your bulbs manually. So while there are some annuals that will need stratification or will germinate better with stratification, you will notice that most of the plants we stratify are perennials. Some examples would be milkweed, echinacea, and even actually apple trees. If you're growing an apple tree from seed, you'll want to cold stratify your apple seed. And most seed packets will indicate right on the packet if you are dealing with a plant that needs some cold stratification. For cold stratification, you'll need paper towels, plastic bags, or some other airtight container, clear and clean water, like good wholesome stuff that your seeds will grow in, your seeds, and a color-fast marker. Label your container with its contents and when they can come back out of your fridge. Don't make your future self do math on the fly. That's a good way to make future self procrastinate. Thoroughly wet the paper towels and then wring them out so they're not sopping wet. Fold them around your seeds and place them in your labeled airtight container. When it's all put together, place it somewhere in your refrigerator where it won't be in the way, but you won't forget about it. Do not put your stratification container in the freezer. It gets cold enough for most seeds in the fridge. Freezing your seeds is just going to risk killing them. Now, if you've heard about winter sowing and you're all head up about it and you want to give it a shot, you are going to need to get a little bit craftier up front. You need some sort of transparent or translucent container. Milk jugs are popular. Just make sure to wash that milk out first. You're going to need soilless potting mix, scissors, clear or light colored tape, and a marker that's not going to fade in the sun and the weather. Now, I've found that Sharpies do fade in the sun or the weather. So you're going to want to use something that's not a Sharpie, something that is actually more permanent. Laundry markers and paint markers are something you could try. You need, of course, your seeds and still good water for growing plants. If it's necessary, cut your container open about 4 inches from the bottom. So if you're using a milk jug, yeah, it's necessary, but sometimes you'll get like a clear-topped clamshell container just from like takeout or something from the grocery store. That, of course, automatically opens for you and you're fine. You're going to want to put some drainage holes in the bottom of your container. You're going to want to fill your container up to the point where it opens with your soilless potting mix. And then sow your seeds according to the directions on the packet. So if they're small seeds, maybe sprinkle them up on top. If they're bigger seeds, maybe push them into the soil. Water your seeds in well and allow the excess water to drain. Use your clear or light-colored animal-named tape to tape the container closed, but leave some sort of opening on the top for rain and other moisture to get in throughout the season, because you do want as much weather exposure as you can get for your seeds. If you're using a milk jug, you can just leave the cap off. You should probably have labeled your container before you got it wet, because markers don't work well when they're wet. Once that's all put together and ready to go, place it outside in a location that is protected from the wind and gets winter sun. Some people will use milk crates to hold their winter sowing containers steady in the wind. So if you've got some milk crates at home, that's something you can use them for. It's not 100% necessary. Alternatively, if you have a cold frame, you can just put all of your seeds in pots in your cold frame. That's the thing I used to do when I had a cold frame, and it worked very well. Now, if you live somewhere where it doesn't get cold enough to stratify your garlics, or even possibly tulip bulbs, you are going to need to manually stratify them. And I'm just going to go over that really quick because it could be helpful for someone. So if it's helpful for you, let me know in the comments. So bulbs are bigger than seeds, and there's going to be a lot more metabolic activity in your bulb as it stratifies in your fridge. So you're going to want to have some sort of breathing holes in your container, or you're going to want to use a container that allows the passage of air through its walls. And because you have exposure to the air in your fridge, you are going to want to watch your bulbs for drying out. Make sure that they don't dry out completely as they stratify, or they could die right there in your fridge. If you have any fruit in your fridge, you're going to want to remove your fruit from your fridge. And this is because fruit will release ethylene gas as it continues to ripen. And ethylene gas is a plant hormone. So you might see that your bulbs in your fridge that you're trying to stratify will break dormancy prematurely in the presence of ethylene gas. So what's going on when we stratify seeds? There are some who say that cold stratification helps break down the seed coat, but that is actually not true. There's not any real stress to the seed coat that occurs as a function of cooling it down. So it's not really a physical process beyond the fact that hormones are physical things as well. The changes in stratified seeds and bulbs are primarily chemical changes. In some seeds or bulbs, we may see an improved expression of superoxide dismutase, which is fun to say. What that is just a really good antioxidant that helps control oxidation reactions in the plant and can improve the plant health during that dormant period. And cold stratification may also decrease the presence of abscisic acid in a seed or a bulb. Abscisic acid is just another plant hormone. This one decreases the likelihood of germination or sprouting. Now, the benefit to a gardener of cold stratifying is that we will get more uniform germination and faster germination. So as we plant out our plants in our little germination area, getting them ready to go, you'll see that more of them come up at the same time. And that can be really handy if you are growing under a plastic dome. You need to remove the dome when they start to grow. It can be really obnoxious when they don't all come up at the same time when you're doing that. So that's really all I wanted to share about cold stratification today. Whatever method you employ to cold stratify in your home, I wish you great success. Thank you for joining me in my garden today. I hope you have a wonderful time in your own.